All right, welcome to the WTF Divorce podcast. Today we are lucky to be joined by Dara Marius. Dara is a divorce attorney in the Las Vegas area. Thanks for being on today, Dara.
Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to this.
Of course. So, talk a little bit about, I know you come from the divorce angle in a different approach, a holistic approach,
Mhm.
and we connected through the Amicable Divorce Network. I think people have an impression of divorce as sharks and, War of the Roses. It sounds like you like to approach divorce in a different way. Talk a little bit about how you handle divorce.
Absolutely. So I like to think of myself as a holistic divorce attorney. I envision the process of divorce as something that I try to help people move through as smoothly as possible. So there's a couple aspects, obviously, to divorce. There's the legal aspect, getting people actually divorced officially. And then there's also the emotional side of divorce and the co parenting side of divorce if you have children. So I try to help people through all of those and do it in a way that works really well for them. So on the legal side of things, I specialize in non litigation divorce. That means we do not go to court until the divorce settlement is worked out. You can do that either through the amicable divorce process, and that is a process where both sides are represented, but it's outside the court system. So we have a very streamlined process. It's a lot less intensive in terms of exchanging discovery, which means it's less expensive, much lower conflict. Definitely very still personalized, very similar to a joint mediation, which is another area that I offer. And we really try to tailor the experience to the people that are involved. So if you think about it, when you go to court, the court has kind of like a one size fits all process for all the people that come in, and it just sort of marches you through it. What we do, either in amicable divorce or in joint mediation, is we tailor the process in terms of discovery. We only do what we need to do so that people can feel comfortable with establishing values for things. So, a good example would be if you go to court, you would have a whole list of discovery you have to do. We need a year's worth of bank statements. Whereas in amicable divorce or in a joint mediation, we might say, hey, are you guys comfortable with just, last month's statement and giving me a screenshot of what your current balance is? Again, streamlining the process. In both amicable and in mediation, we have the people being the decision makers. So that gives a lot more autonomy to people to really put together parenting plans that work for them, or to carve out a unique asset distribution. Whereas in court, you're kind of like, a lot of courts don't have the time. So I like to think of it as the court's kind of like the hatchet, just divide it in half. Whereas in amicable divorce or joint mediation, we use a scalpel and we're careful with how we do things. So that's one part of holistic divorce. The second part is probably where I'm most passionate, and that is on the education side and supporting people emotionally. I do have a master in social work, but I am by no means trying to be anybody's therapist during the divorce process. However, I do believe that with the right education, we can help people navigate this process better. So that might look like co parenting education, which is a real passion of mine. So when I have clients come in, when we're examining a custody schedule, I will suggest to them, I'll say, okay, let's look at your children. Let's look at where they are developmentally. Let's look at how the divorce process is going to impact them. Let's give you some strategies to help them through that process. Let's pick a parenting timeshare that's appropriate for that age group. What's appropriate for a 5-year-old is not the same as a 15-year-old. So I really try to help educate them about co-parenting in general. And I also tailor their plans to be very specific for their family and their needs. And then the last part of it that I bring in, I believe so much that we need to view divorce as a life challenge. And so when I say this, what I mean is that we all go through life challenges. It can be health, it could be job related, it could be a death in the family, it could be divorce. They all share a common element. They kind of take over your life for a bit, and they create a lot of emotion. And so, what I like to do for people is give them the right tools to interact with the emotions that come along with divorce in a healthy way. I do that through a meditation app that I love and I give to all of my clients free of charge. And I guide them with certain meditations on that app to help develop these skills of emotional agility. So, sorry, that was kind of a long winded answer. So, basically, holistic divorce is taking care of the whole person as they go through this process.
What is that? What is the app that you use? I feel like you mentioned it before. It's a
Yes,
meditation app.
yes, I love this app. It's called 10% Happier. And I think the reason I love this app so much is that I like to say it's meditation for the rest of us. You know, like you definitely have the gurus and the very, people who can sit in silence for 20 minutes. This is really made for regular people. And what we're trying to cultivate is an idea of mindfulness. So when you're helping people develop emotional agility, the very first step is to have them actually be able to quiet their mind a little bit to notice what's going on in it. So the meditation app starts that process of not only cultivating mindfulness, but also using their course on emotional agility, which was taught by Oren Soper, is the teacher on the app. It really gives people skills to learn to acknowledge emotions, to see them when they're happening, to name them, to understand how their personal body is impacted when they experience an emotion. And it gives them some skills of how to manage that when the emotion happens. So what I usually do is I don't require it, but I tell my clients, I'm like, this is included free of charge. You will get this app. And I'd like you to listen to this particular set of courses and meditations. I think they are maybe a 2-minute video and a 10-minute meditation. And then as we go through the process, I try to integrate some of those lessons in the process itself. There's great, another course on there is called Relationships, but it's really about communication. So I bring some of those things in as well. So the idea is that when this person leaves this process, they also have a skill set that they can apply to anything in life that's challenging. So I really love 10% Happier.
Yeah, and I remember I read the book. I think it's Dan Harris, and
Yes,
I have used the app before, and I love the name of it because it really fits well with any life challenge, but specifically divorce, because people think everything's got to be horrible or good. And I'm like, you're really just looking to turn that dial a little bit. So if you're, 10% is a great return in the stock market. If you could
exactly.
be 10% less stressed or 10% less miserable, or it takes you, 2 hours to get over something instead of 20 hours, like these are all huge gains that we can make. And a lot of that comes down to lowering our expectations and like being more realistic with that this might suck, but how can we make it suck a little less? And what are things that we can do to kind of quiet some of the noise? Because it is a hard time. And I think people think that I'm not supposed to feel like this, or why am I still so frustrated with my ex, or this process is so long. But in reality, it's just like, finding little ways to temper it. So I think that's a great name for the meditation app and
I
how we can
agree.
apply it in divorce.
I agree. And the interesting thing is, one of the things I do for every client that comes in for a consultation is I put together a book called Divorce 101. And it has information about the attorney-client privilege. It has information about legal terms because I, want people to be able to have a little bit of a reference after we've had a conversation. But you know what I also include in there? I include information about the stages of grief associated with divorce. So often people are, like you just said, like, why am I still feeling this way? What's going on? And when you start to contextualize divorce in this grief process, you realize that much like in every other grief process, you circle back through different times and you're in different phases and it's not linear. And sometimes for people, just having that understanding allows them to be more gentle with themselves when they're feeling things. I think it's important. The one thing I love about that emotions course is that it points out to people that emotions are just a natural human experience. You're put into a situation, and of course, you're going to experience these emotions. So it takes a little bit of the blame and judgment out and allows you to just say, okay, I'm going through this right now. It's going to stop at some point. I'm going to do maybe a breathing exercise, or I'm going to do something that's going to help me make it go through faster. But it allows people to stop being so judgy on themselves. And I think that's important.
Oh, totally. And as somebody who's been through divorce, you're not really, the support that you're getting doesn't always connect in the way that like resonates with you. Oh, things will be better, or it's so great you're rid of them. But in reality, like you said, you're going through all of these
Hard.
different feelings. So yes, just accepting that some days are going to suck. And even like that concept can, like you said, like take some of that self-judgment away. Just let you sit in it and know that things will get better, but these are waves of it, and you do have to be patient and ride some choppy ones along the way.
Yeah, that is very true.
All right, let's talk a little bit more tactical. What are maybe a few pointers, tips you could give somebody to prepare for divorce, either before they file documents? What are a few tips you could give somebody that's in the early stages of divorce?
Well, the thing about divorce is it really doesn't matter if you're getting divorced from mediation or you're going through amicable divorce or you're going to court. They all start the same. And in that respect, we as attorneys have to wrap our arms around your entire property and marital estate. We have to know everything. So the marital settlement agreement will have comprehensive information for people. It requires knowing bank numbers. It requires knowing, your VIN number on your car, your legal description on your property. There's so much information we have to get. So one thing that your listeners could do if they haven't already met with an attorney and they want to have a holding place to gather their information, there's a platform called detour.life. And I use it as a practitioner. It's most of the people in amicable divorce, are offered this and use this. But what I love about it is that it is made for the divorcing people. It's not made for the attorneys. And it's a very user-friendly platform, and it takes you through all of the information your attorney is going to eventually need. So it gives you background on your relationship, when you were married, where you were married, your children if you have them, their ages, and then it goes through the assets. So it covers real property, it covers your cars, your bank accounts, your investments, your 401ks, your IRAs, all the things that are investments or assets in your portfolio. Then it goes over to the debts. It covers mortgages and car loans and credit card debts. And one piece of advice I would really recommend is getting your credit report done. You're like, well, why do I need my credit report? So I hope I'm not dating myself too much, but I definitely remember many moons ago when I would go into a store and they would say, oh, do you want to open a credit card? You can get 10% off. And there are a lot of those credit cards probably out there that you don't even think about or you don't even remember that are open. And if I'm doing my job right as the attorney, I want to capture all of that. I want to say, here are all the credit cards that could possibly be associated with either party, and I'm going to assign them and make sure that the other person's not responsible. So get your credit report. Very, very helpful. Another thing I tell people to do, even if it's totally friendly and there's really not a huge problem between the people, I say, make a new email address that is just for your divorce and keep it on one device and have a password that you never have used before. Come up with something totally random. Why am I suggesting this? Well, in the worst case scenarios, you have bad actors who are trying to access your email. In the other situation, you're just at least segregating all of your divorce stuff into one email, which is very helpful. It totally takes away any concern about somebody reading your email. So I definitely recommend that to my clients. Um, the next thing you're going to want to do is put together what is euphemistically called a spending plan. Um, you might know it as a budget, but people generally don't like that. We've got to start to figure out what your post divorce life might look like. Are you planning, even tentatively, to live temporarily in rented housing? Are you thinking that you maybe want to, take over the house? Or can you do that? Do you have enough income to support that? Would you be able to refinance it? So you want to start to get a sense for both parties, what are going to be your expenses going forward? Because that's going to frame the discussion about if there's a support issue, how much do we need in terms of spousal support? And it's also going to be really important guidance for the person on how to move forward. So, one of the things that I like to do when I'm working with people is see their situation and say, are there any other professionals who might be able to bolster them in this process? So sometimes, and this is very frequent, most marriages, one spouse is the primary accountant. It's a division of labor. That's how most marriages work. It's not that you both couldn't do it, it's just that one person kind of does it. So when I have a situation, maybe it's a gray divorce, as we call them, you're over 50. I take issue with the gray divorce thing because I'm over 50. But if you have a long-term marriage where one person has primarily been doing the accounting work, I might suggest to the spouse who isn't in the accounting, hey, you might want to talk to a certified divorce financial analyst. They might be able to help you start to understand things and figure out, if you got this many assets, what would be the return on that? What could you rely on? So what additional might you need in spousal support? Another professional group that I work with a lot are real estate agents and lending professionals who specialize in working with divorce clients. When one person stays in the house, if both people are on the mortgage, you really only have two options. And if we had had this conversation last year, I wouldn't have even said two options. But with interest rates where they are, there's kind of two options. Option one, which is the preferred, which is what a court would definitely order, is okay, if the house is going to spouse one needs to refinance and take spouse two off of the mortgage. Certified divorce lending professionals, they can help that first spouse that now might have less income and less assets do that refinance. A second option, I'll just throw it out there, that's happening now is, hey, interest rates are super high. I have a 2%, yeah, we want to keep the child in this house. Can you help me out? And so a lot of times in those more friendly type situations, or where you have a parent who's very concerned about the child still staying in the house with that parent, they might agree and say, look, okay, for a period of 18 months or until interest rates hit this level, I will agree to stay on this note, but you have to agree to indemnify me in case I was ever asked to pay on this note. So a couple of options there. Just coming back again to your original question, things that you should do. Keeping digital copies of and uploading them to detour.life of a bank statement, of your deed to your house. That is going to be so helpful for the attorney when you walk in and say, okay, here's all of my information. Here's everything that we have. This I got before marriage. I'm in a community property state, so this might be separate property. I got this inheritance. That might be separate property. So having those types of documents that kind of support those positions, that would be so helpful for the attorney.
And I'll say, as somebody that's gone through this in that beginning stage, that feels so overwhelming. You're like, I can't even remember. Your brain is not thinking clearly. So I think a big tip I would say is do the best you can, spew it
Yes.
all out, get it all out there, get as much as you can to the attorney, assume that you're going to need more, but get the wheels in motion. And sometimes it's better to have like that first draft and they'll say, oh, what about this? And then you're like, you can go back and get it. And you feel all that pressure to get everything right and get it all to your attorney. A lot of times that can lead
Your
to
attorney,
inaction.
right. And your attorney is there to help you. Okay. So don't ever feel like it's all on you. And I want to bring that up as another point as well. When you go to see an attorney, and by the way, by doing all that work ahead of time or being the person who uploads and does all that information, you're saving yourself some money because the paralegal of the law firm or the attorney is going to be doing maybe a review of what you put in and said, hey, can you also get me this and this and this? They're not going to be doing all that work of uploading. So it's a great money saver to do that. The second thing is when you have hired an attorney or a mediator, an amicable advocate, you don't have to be the captain of your ship anymore. You can turn this over to somebody else. So I've had situations where you still have two people living in the same house and they're getting divorced. And it's really, really tense time. And I'll say to them, maybe I'm doing a joint mediation. I'll say, okay, guys, nobody talks about this at home. No discussions. I will work with each of you. I will work with you together, but do not discuss this between each other. And they've oftentimes come back to me and said, oh my gosh, our relationship has never been better. And I said, well, of course, because you're not talking about the hard stuff anymore. So I think that's really important, is that part of what you are paying for in a divorce is to have somebody else absorb these, this whole process for you. And you can just follow what the attorney asks for. And it makes it a lot easier.
That is a great tip because your instinct is to try and get some information or be
Yeah.
very defensive. And if you can just accept that, hey, it's a rule, like I'd rather talk to my attorney first. I don't want to talk about this thing in the house. It kind of diffuses some of it because, especially if you have kids at home, you want to keep things cordial. It's one of the hardest parts of divorce is living with somebody while you're going through this stage. I always say, like, it will get worse before it gets better. So you're almost just trying to get to that liftoff part so you can rebuild your life because you will be co-parenting together. But during this stage, it's so tense that you just want to
True.
minimize that kind of discussion. And having those boundaries is an important thing.
And
Um,
I'll also throw out to you, so there's a way to do it where it's a positive. So when you say to the person, instead of saying, I just want to talk to my attorney, you can flip it around and say, now that I have an attorney and they're handling all the legal stuff, we can just focus on being co-parents. And and I always say to people, good begets good, bad begets bad. So when you put something positive, a lot of times you might start to get some more positive back. And if you're in that really challenging time where it's, I kind of liken it to somebody has already died, but you haven't had the funeral yet. It's that in between time. If you're in that in between time, your job is to really try to keep things calm, especially if you have children at home, and make what I call value-based decisions. So what is a value-based decision? So your value as a parent is most likely going to be the well-being of your children. If you filter every text, what you say, what you write in an email, what you do through that lens, you're going to make good choices behaviorally. And again, your attorney is dealing with all the other stuff, but your job is to create a calm environment for your children. I do want to share this. I'll throw this out here because, like I said, co-parenting to me is really, really at the highest level what the priority is in the divorce process. Because if we do our job right through the divorce, these people end up afterwards being good with each other. So co-parenting, we focus on continuity, protection, and reassurance. This is the CPR of co-parenting. So continuity, keeping routines similar, both between houses if that's possible. It's not going to be identical, but kind of having a similar routine, similar caregivers for younger children, a continuity of experience if they're involved in, for example, Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts, and let that happen at both people's houses. Protection from arguing, protection from the divorce, protection from being involved, really keeping them out of the whole divorce process, not using them as a messenger, not really, if you can, letting them see you be very upset by something that their other parent might have been responsible for, and reassurance that they had nothing to do with this situation, that you both love them very much, and that you both really still love the other person as their parent, because kids' identity is formed by both parents. So those are really, really important suggestions for people. So again, coming back to that value-based decision-making, everything you do goes through there. It's not what someone deserves. It's what you know is the right thing to do for that big value.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that a lot. Even if it does feel like you're faking it a little, or it's like I always say, it's exhausting taking the high road too. You're like, oh, well, I'm doing this. How come this other person? But I like what you said. It also gives your soon to be ex less to fight with. If you don't really give them material to kind of dig their teeth into, they have less, to work with, even if they want to, or if you want to. So
So
that's
it's
that's a
funny that you
great
say that,
concept.
Rod, because, at the office I work in, I am the only non-litigation divorce attorney. Everyone else here litigates divorce. And I am actually brought in on a lot of their cases to meet with the clients to help reframe their behavior, because you're absolutely right. Were something to go to litigation, the person who has acted impeccably as a co-parent has a much better outcome in the litigation side. So it's kind of like a win-win-win. And again, I encourage people always to think of it. It's not what you're doing this because the person deserves it. You're doing it, number one, because you know it is right for the children, and it's also right for you. When you can look at yourself in the mirror and say, I can't control what this other person does, I can only control myself, it takes you out of this self-worth coming from an interaction and more about self-worth coming from who you are as a human being.
Yeah, it's a great point, because this is the reason you're getting divorced, so you are not fighting anymore. So if your spouse cheated, or if they were a terrible person, like, you
Right.
have those feelings, and those are normal to feel like that. But the reason you're getting divorced is so you can, you know, contain those feelings in a different way, parent the way you want to, have that separation, and hopefully improve both of your lives. So it's kind of a counterintuitive thing, but it's like staying married will be harder. So let's like just get through this
I,
hard part.
I say that to people all that, I jokingly say more in a mediation and someone gets frustrated by, she's always doing this or and I'll say, great, I'm glad, because I want to make sure you guys are, you should be getting divorced, that there's real reasons for you're getting divorced. But with that said, let's come back and, focus on the process. What a lot of times people find out after they're done with divorce is that, you chose to marry this person, right? There's got to be a lot of good there, or you wouldn't have chosen to marry them in the first place. It turns out this relationship was for a season of life and not for the whole thing. But if you can take out all of the stuff that made you so frustrated and angry or hurt, an infidelity, or for whatever reason that the divorce is happening, you can just interact with them at the level that you enjoy interacting with each other. And I think this is also important. We talk so much about having young children and continuing to co-parent, but a real passion of mine is thinking of the family as a family and children and parents throughout the whole lifetime of the people. So a lot of times when you'll meet with a divorce attorney, they'll say, do you have any minor children? And if the answer is no, they will that will be the end of discussing your children. I tend to look at it differently. I'm like, okay, that's great. We're not making a parenting plan, for these children. But tell me a little bit more, if you have kids that are in their 20s or early 30s even, are you involved in their lives in any type of financial way? Are you helping them pay for college? Are you supporting them? I will factor that into the ultimate marital settlement agreement because, again, even for those adult children, you want continuity in their lives. You want them protected from the divorce. They shouldn't really be involved. And by doing that, you're going to maintain the relationship you have with those kids. I had a couple that finished their divorce. They'd been married more than 30 years. And literally the week later, they went to Colorado to celebrate the graduation of their eldest from graduate school. And they had a great time. That's if you're doing this process right and being sensitive to all of that, that's the outcome you want to have.
Yeah, it's a great way to look at it. It's almost like you've got family members that you roll your eyes at or you really don't like being around, but they are family. It is blood. So it's like an interesting, complete reframe of like, we're married, everything has to work. So now we're figuring out a completely new setup. But like you said, when the kids are the focal point of it,
Mm-hmm.
like there is a better way to do it.
For
I think
sure.
that's a great place to end on, Dara. Thank you so much. Let people know where they can connect with you.
Absolutely. So they can, I work for Canaan Law Group in Las Vegas. So you could call the law office. It's 702 or they can email, at the law firm. They can go on the website, which is canaanlawgroup.com. My portion is under holistic divorce. So if you go to the website and you click on holistic divorce, it's going to jump you out to actually a separate website that I put together that completely encompasses all these different aspects. I do have a lot of resources on there. I have information about dealing with, divorce and all the stuff that's in any of the materials that I give to people. You can find it on there. So I'm happy to help anybody. I wish you all the best, and I appreciate you thinking to talk to me. This is definitely something that I'm very passionate about, and I enjoy helping people through so they can move forward with their lives.
Yes, and everybody, you can also find Dara on the Amicable Divorce Network. I think we all get through divorce and then wish we knew about resources like this. So thank you so much, Dara, for being on today.
Thank you for having me.